How did you first get involved with Mary's Place, and what was your role?
I first got involved with Mary's Place after Amazon had purchased property in the regrade that had an old motel on it. And I was super concerned about what were we going to do with this old motel that was vacant for 3 years before we started development on the site. And Chris Ritchie knew about Amazon's purchase, and she was on the board of Mary's Place. And she reached out to me and she asked, "What are you going to be doing with that motel? I think we might have a good fit." And so she introduced me to Marty Hartman and to many on the Mary's Place board. And as a vice president of global real estate and facilities for Amazon, it was my decision on what we were going to do with that site. And it was a marriage made in heaven.
What is your favorite memory of Mary's Place? A moment, interaction, experience that stands out?
So, favorite moment and memory of Mary's Place, actually there are many, if they could be. One is that the first day that we showed Marty and the team the old motel and said, "What would you think if we were to give this to you to use for the next couple of years until we started development on the site?" I mean, it was almost immediate tears at that moment. The next was when we decided that Amazon wanted to make a permanent home for Mary's Place within our corporate campus. And I remember getting together with Marty Hartman and the team from Mary's Place and saying, let's think big. What would it look like if you were to ever have a place? What would the perfect place look like? And I think everyone was a little bit dumbfounded, quite honestly. They didn't really know where I was coming from, and I didn't share with them that we ultimately wanted to build them a permanent home. But it was starting the process of thinking big and dreaming about what a permanent home for Mary's Place could look like. And that entire process was not only incredible for me, but I know that it was incredible opportunity and experience for the Mary's Place team.
So what impact did you see Mary's Place having in the community during the time when you were involved?
The impact that Mary's Place has had in the community is profound. The number of families that have come to the shelter, and especially for the children that are at risk due to health reasons. So the popsicle place that was developed in the former motel and now in the Mary's Place shelter at the regrade has been, I think, monumental for so many families. And to me, it's hard to measure, truly hard to measure, but you see it on the smiles of the children and the parents in the facility, that they know that they're in a safe place and that Mary's Place is there to help them find at one point and some point their forever home.
How have you seen Mary's Place change?
Well, Mary's Place has changed and adapted to the needs of the community. I think where Mary's Place started as a day shelter for women, and now to actually providing housing and home services and all of the other services that they do to actually prevent people from going into being homeless, I think is just, again, they've had to adapt to the needs of the community, and they don't know from today to 6 months, a year from now, exactly what those needs will be. And what I loved about them is how adaptive they're able to be and how quick they're able to pivot. An example of that is when the center opened during COVID, and they were able to actually understand the needs of what those families were going to need. That the shelter could not have come online at a better time.
What was one event or time period you remember, and you mentioned a couple of these, that is particularly important to the history of the organization?
I think some of the most important aspects to the overall history of the organization is the fact that Mary's Place in the regrade opened at the time of the global pandemic. And the needs of the families could not have been greater at that time, and to be able to bring them inside. No child at the time within the Mary's Place family was sleeping outside and that we could keep the people safe.
Where would you hope to see Mary's Place go in the future?
Well, if I was to think about the future, ultimately I'd like to see Mary's Place as an organization not be required in our community. I mean, wouldn't that be amazing if homelessness was solved? But for now and forever, as long as Mary's Place needs a home, they have a home in the regrade. And Amazon will always be there at their side to help them and help all the families that they serve day in and day out.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your memories. Is there anything else that you want to share as part of this history project?
Well, for me, the one thing I definitely would like to share is that working with Mary's Place and all of the things that I have learned personally and my own personal involvement, and to actually have Amazon build a permanent home for Mary's Place and to see what happens in the shelter day in and day out is by far the most meaningful project that I have ever touched. And it will stay with me for the rest of my life.
Thank you.
Thank you.